Hi everybody! Today we're going to learn how to find the volume of a composite figure. A composite figure is a figure composed of or made of at least two different figures. So an example would be this three-dimensional L shape that I've drawn here, or this three-dimensional kind of two-layer rectangular prism that I've built out of blocks. I would encourage you to build some of the composite figures that you're looking at today out of your cubes at home and break them apart so that you can make better sense of what is happening on the models on your page. How we find the volume of a composite figure is we first find a way to easily break our figure into two separate rectangular prisms. So I'm looking at my composite figure right here, and I'm seeing I could easily break it apart here. So our first step is we break apart our composite figure into two different rectangular prisms, and then we figure out the volume of those rectangular prisms. So the volume of this one piece is 6 cubic units, and the volume of this figure is 4 times 2 is 8 cubic units. So I have 8 cubic units here, and I have 6 cubic units here, and that means that the total volume of my composite figure is 14 cubic units. And we can prove that by counting. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So again, with a composite figure, we just use what we've already learned about calculating the volume of a rectangular prism, but we have an extra step where we need to split our figure into two separate rectangular prisms to find their volume and then add them together. Let's try it out with one of the practice problems from your workbook for today. So I'm having you do page 293 and 294 today. Let's take a look at problem number 4. So I've already kind of split this figure into two separate figures so that I can find the volume. To me, this makes sense as a rectangular prism, and this makes sense as a rectangular prism. And if I split it up this way, then I already have a length, a width, and a height for this first rectangular prism. The challenge is figuring out what the length, width, and height are for this second one. To do that, I need to take a careful look at the rest of my picture here and look at some corresponding lines. So I have a width of 6 centimeters. This whole side is 16 centimeters, but I cut it off here. So let's look around for clues. I'm seeing that this line is 6 centimeters, so that means that this opposite one here will be 6 centimeters. And if this side of the rectangle is 6 centimeters, then that means that this opposite side is also 6 centimeters. So if this is 6 centimeters, and this whole length right here is 16 centimeters, then that means that this chunk right here is 10 centimeters. So now I have a height, and I have a width. Let's try and find a length. So again, I'm going to look around and see what other sides give me clues. Let's see, let's try this one. This side's 8 centimeters, so that means this opposite side will be 8 centimeters. And this opposite side will be 8 centimeters. And that means that this will be 8 centimeters, which means that this will be 8 centimeters. So all of these opposite sides of the rectangles are going to be equal length to each other. Okay, so now I have 3 dimensions, 6, 8, and 10 here, 24, 8, and 6 here. So I can proceed to finding the volume of this rectangular prism and this rectangular prism and adding them together. Let's definitely make sure that we're getting some scratch paper because that's a lot of computations. So let's start with, I'm going to call this one rectangular prism 1, rectangular prism 2. So for rectangular prism 1, I have a length of 24. I have a width of 8, and I have a height of 6. And if you see these dimensions differently than I do about the length, width, and height, it does not matter. As long as you multiply all 3 of them together, one at a time, the answer is going to be the same. So here is figure number 1, and for figure number 2, the volume is going to be 6 times 8 is the length times the width, times the height is 10. Okay, so I'm going to move my scratch paper over, and I'm going to go ahead and do this math. 24 times 8 is 192. I'm not walking through all of the steps for multi-digit multiplication. I'm going to ask that you do that on your own. Okay, so 192 is what's inside the parentheses. 192 times 6 is 1,152. So the volume of my first rectangular prism is 1,152. Let's move down to my second one. 6 times 8 is a fast fact, so that'll be easy for me. 48 times 10, and 48 times 10, we can use our 0 pattern. Take 48, write on one more 0, so that's 480. And the volume of my second rectangular prism is 480. And these are both centimeters cubed. Okay, so my last step then is to add those two volumes together to figure out the total volume of this whole figure. We're just figuring out the volume of this rectangular prism and this one, and then adding them together. So I will add 1,152 to 480, and I will get a total, of 1,632. So the volume of my composite figure is 1,632 cubic centimeters. So once more, I'll write down the steps for finding the volume of composite figures. Step 1 is the trickiest one. You need to split it up into rectangular prisms and find the dimensions. Step 2 is find the volume of each rectangular prism. Remember that volume is length times width times height. And then the last step is add up the individual volumes. We have been doing step 2 all week. So for this one, I'm adding on the added task of steps 1 and step 3, and that is how we find the volume of a composite figure.